This is video 2.2 of the early dynastic period. So I'm going to first talk to you about some of the big things that happened in the first dynasty as far as the material record is concerned. So this is the first time during the reign of King Narmer and on his palette that we see the two crowns, the individual red crown of Lower Egypt and the individual white crown of Upper Egypt. This is also the first time, first dynasty, reign of Aha, when one of his officials builds a tomb outside of Memphis. Now, Memphis is the capital city that was created by the first king of Egypt, so this is significant. This means that Memphis was being used as a capital city at least as early as the reign of Aha. In the tomb of King Jer at Abydos, we find royal jewelry for the first time. This means that some of the beads were actually made of luxury items that came from outside of Egypt, so it insinuates long-distance trade. Also, the floor of some of the later tombs of the first dynasty kings at Abydos were made of granite. This means that they had surplus, extra resources, and were actually able to get granite from the city of Aswan and move it all the way back to Abydos. As far as main political events for Dynasty 2 are concerned, things are very chaotic. We don't really know very much about what happened until the last two kings of the dynasty. They are Per Ibsen and Kasekemwi. And from their names alone, it is suggested that there was some sort of political unrest. So as you know from previous photographs, the typical animal or bird to surmount the Serach is the falcon, the Horus falcon. In the case of Per Ibsen, he has two Serachs. One is surmounted by Horus falcon and one by Seth. Now, the identity of Seth is a mystery, but it is possible that we have yet another option for what this animal actually is, and it's the okapi. Anyways, we'll just put that into the pot as a possible option. So we have something different that's happening in the reign of Per Ibsen in that he is using both the followers of Horus and the followers of Seth to unite Egypt. For this particular topic, you should refer to the readings in Kemp. He elaborates a lot on the myth of state and Horus and Seth. So please take a look there. Now, Per Ibsen is followed by Kasekemwi. Kasekemwi and Per Ibsen are also the only two kings to be buried at Abydos, while their predecessors of the same dynasty are buried at Saqqara, which is considered to be the first Memphite cemetery. Now, this also signifies some sort of change from the perspective of the kings themselves and how they're ruling Egypt. And this is another reason why we have this idea of some sort of political unrest going on that is finally satisfied or taken care of in the reign of Per Ibsen near the end of the second dynasty. So this is Kasekemwi. Kasekemwi is special for a number of reasons. One, we have the first kind of almost human size, almost life-size statuary built in stone in his reign, so major jump forward in technology. As far as the Serach is concerned, he has both the Horus falcon and the Seth animal on top of his Serach. His original name was Kasekem, but at some point in time he changed his name to Kasekemwi, thus adding the dual ending on. So originally his name meant the power has arisen, and now we've got his name meaning the two powers have arisen. So is this the power of Horus and the power of Seth, meaning a united Egypt? We don't know. Anyhow, the economy. We have a very complex economy from an early stage in the early dynastic period. It is state-controlled. We know that they're engaging in long-distance trade. We know that they have state-sponsored craft workshops, and they are collecting taxes. They are initiating corvée labor from the inhabitants. Now, some of the best crafts that are produced at this time are produced in, I guess we could call them government workshops, government craft workshops. Not to say that regular artisans were not engaging in craft production, which they were. If you look at the list here and on the last slide, you will see that they were capable of producing many types of artifacts. So right here we have copper being a common metal that's used in artisan production. And we most frequently see hammered plates of copper. Jewelry was a very popular item to produce, and many different materials are produced were used in their jewelry. So precious stones, semi-precious stones, various types of metals all come together in the production of jewelry. Stone vessels, a big deal. So I've got this quote up here on this slide here, and this is not my quote. This is from somebody else, which is why I put it in quotations. But pretty much we have mass production of beautiful artifacts being produced at a very early age, and that is one of the biggest, most important things about the early dynastic period. So by the early dynastic period, we have writing. It probably appeared earlier, but as in previous conversations, we've said it's very hard to pinpoint. It is an indigenous invention, possibly not the idea of writing, but the actual system itself. It was produced within the court, and we see it being used in its earliest renditions to name things, to memorialize, etc. This here is the earliest confirmed writing in ancient Egypt. It comes from the site of Abydos, from a tomb that is now called Tomb Uj. The part that I'm circling right here, you can see that these could be considered numerical texts, so they're numbering something, in this case possibly 6. And then we see across the top there's 2 other versions of numerical tags. The little hole probably means that they were attached to some other commodity. In the next row, you can see several birds, and in certain cases, like the one I'm going to circle in a moment here, you can see that this resembles later hieroglyphs quite specifically. So is this early writing? Is this just a picture? We don't know what these tags actually refer to. This one down here also looks like what we would later call the Bennu bird. Anyhow, we also have geometrical text, for lack of a better term, and you can see the little swirl on the left here, and we don't know what this means either. So we consider these early forms of writing, but other than the numerical texts probably representing the number of little dots, points, indentations, we're not quite sure what the rest of them mean. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about ancient Egyptian writing at this point in time. And just as in Mesopotamia, we have to distinguish between the language that's being written and the script that's being used to write it. So the language is ancient Egyptian, and we have a series of dialects you can see on the left-hand column here: Old Egyptian, Middle Egyptian, Late Egyptian, Demotic, and Coptic, all being versions of ancient Egyptian. On the right, there are 2 specific scripts that I'm talking about here: hieratic and hieroglyphs. Hieroglyphs probably emerged first, followed shortly thereafter by hieratic. Hieroglyphs means sacred carved letters. Hieratic, sacred script. Hieroglyphs could be considered like the printing, while hieratic is more like cursive or handwriting. And so usually if they were using hieroglyphs, it would be on monumental works carved into stone, whereas hieratic would appear on papyrus. Now, the language, the name of the language, corresponds more or less to the period in which it appears. So in the Old Kingdom, we have Old Egyptian. Starting in the First Intermediate Period and moving into the Middle Kingdom, we have Middle Egyptian, and so on and so forth. For this class, we're only concerned with the first 2. Middle Egyptian is considered to be the classical stage of the language. So if you are to learn hieroglyphs today, this is where you start. It was used as a literary language. Religious texts were written in Middle Egyptian long after it was actually used as a spoken language. So if you compare this to Sumerian in Mesopotamia, we get a comparable picture here. Demotic and Coptic are the 2 latest phases of the language and refer to both the dialect as well as the script that it was written in. So here is an example of hieroglyphs. This is the one you're probably most familiar with. We are actually dealing with a series of pictures here. So I'm circling the viper, which looks like a little snake to you. And then we have other pictures like the owl, which is right here. And this is a forward-facing owl. We can always tell by the little beak. And then we have more maybe enigmatic signs, but in this case it is the bread loaf, which is above the viper and to the right of the owl, which I think I'm gonna circle right now. Anyhow, so these are identifiable signs, and this is the earliest form of writing or script found in ancient Egypt. So again, sacred carved letters used in monumental works carved into stone. The next script is hieratic. Now, what I'm showing you here is 2 columns of handwritten hieroglyphs coupled with 2 columns of hieratic. Now, what I'm trying to show you is that it's a one-to-one sign correspondence here. So I'm circling the one sign, which in its entirety is reproduced in hieratic on the right. So you can see that there. It's one sign per one sign. It's just written quicker, faster, more cursive-like. So right here you can see I'm going to show you the book roll or the scroll here. And it looks kind of like a book roll. And then if you look over in the column of the hieratic, you might be able to make out that it is also a book roll. But it's more abbreviated. It appears to have been created faster. And this makes hieratic a little bit more difficult to read than the hieroglyphs themselves. But it is a one-to-one ratio. Here you can see a determinative, or the sign for a man, which is fairly recognizable in the hieroglyphs, maybe not so recognizable in the hieratic. Now, cursive hieroglyphs is a little bit more rare, and I guess it falls between hieratic and hieroglyphs in that the signs are a little bit clearer in cursive hieroglyphs than they are in hieratic, but not as clear as they are in hieroglyphs. You can still see the determinative, though, for a man in the cursive hieroglyphs. And this is a form of writing or a script that is often written on papyrus. Here is a very quick look at Demotic. This began in the 24th dynasty, so well beyond the confines of our class. And the last script that I'm going to show you is Coptic, and this is Greek characters with several additional characters. And Coptic is used to write Ancient Egyptian, the most recent version of it.